Can we have, should I do this in memory of Mayor Davies? Roll call order, please. Yeah, there we go.
Councilmember Chang. Here. Councilmember Power.
She's coming in the door.
Okay, we'll come back to her.
On her way.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cozencourt.
Here.
Mayor Davies, who is absent tonight. Councilmember Power. Here. Mayor Davies is absent tonight. Thank you.
Okay, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Mike, would you read it from the country, please? All right.
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Do we have any audience communications?
None were received.
None? Council? Anybody? Okay. Let's get to business then. We have our city finance director reports. We have a 5-year budget for fiscal year 2024-25 through 2028-29 and 24-25 salary schedule.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Cozencourt. Is this on? Can you hear me okay? Okay. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Jones in a moment, but I wanted to just say a few remarks to start the evening with. So thank you for joining us. Very honored and proud to be your city manager for this great city of Tehachapi. The budget that we are going to be presenting to you is nearly $40 million. It's balanced and it's solid. We're very proud of that fact. It reflects the amazing men and women that work for the city of Tehachapi and people that support the city and the community also. This is all of our job. All of the employees are very dedicated professionals in each one of their individual roles that they serve in the city of Tehachapi. I would like to thank the citizens once again for voting yes on Measure S and placing their trust in your local city government as we continue to invest in tax dollars for public safety and maintaining our infrastructure while maintaining our leadership role in one of the safest, cleanest cities in all of Kern County and beyond. With this budget, and the first time ever, we plan on being fully staffed at Tehachapi Police Department with Chief Standridge's leadership. So we're very proud of that fact. Should happen very soon, actually. And we'll be adding some personnel to our Public Works Department and Communications Department to continue to support those investments, whether they're public or private dollars. With this budget, we're going to be moving Key Budge into a director's position and supporting all of the community events that this city and community really take a lot of pride in. I was talking to Mr. Budge the other day, which I think there's 62 events, and since then there have been 4 or 5 or more added. And I don't want to mislead anybody about special events. We're about the infrastructure. We're about public safety. We're about public works and maintaining our infrastructure and providing fresh water, treating wastewater, those sorts of things, and the transparency of your local government. Very, very critical items that we're doing. And over the next 3 years, we are going to be investing $24+ million. $24 million in our infrastructure. That's a big number.
Over the next how many years?
Over the next 3 years. That may change. It may change upward, actually. That's a lot of tax dollars that are going into our city, and we're very proud to properly manage those dollars and continue to reap the benefits. You've seen last year lots of asphalt was relayed. This year, this summer, and next, twice as much, you know. It's pretty incredible what the team continues to pull together and piece together different budgets and grants and different things along with Measure S money. So without further ado, I want to introduce Ed Jones, our Chief Financial Officer for the City of Tehachapi. We have about 60, 65 slides that we're going to go through. We'll start with general fund. I would encourage, if you have questions, please ask them, or just retain them till the end, and we'll stop after general fund, and we'll go into our enterprise funds, water, wastewater, so on and so forth. So we've got plenty of time, don't want to feel rushed, and Mr. Jones, you can take it away for us.
All right, thank you. Just to kind of give you an overview of the process, so we started this budget process back in January. We sent out our instructions and asked our departments to give us their budget estimates for mid-year, as well as the 5-year budget. We've had several department meetings to go over the budget and work to finalize the numbers and bring it to you as it is today. After adoption, hopefully today, we still continue to put the budget book together. We've asked our departments to fill out their department narratives, complete their goals, objectives, performance evaluations. And then once we put the entire budget book together, we'll submit it for our GFOA and CSMFO awards, as we've been doing each year. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the whole process. So. All right. So we'll start looking citywide. So overall, the entire budget, all of the departments, and kind of the big expenses and factors to look at. You've seen this slide probably, some of you, at least the last few years. Just a reminder about our fire contract. This is, you can see basically starting in 22-23, we had the first year of the 6 years on the contract. Our total contract costs have gone from $700,000 all the way to nearly $2.2 million in 27-28.
And I'll remind you, so we have this handy cursor on the screen. See this red cursor? So if you want to follow along on the screens, it might be a little easier when Mr. Jones is talking about the different columns and things. So up to you, you've got a paper copy in front of you, but we do have now this IT upgrade, let's say.
So looking at this row, this is what we call the allocated property tax. So that's the amount of property tax that's paid by our residents. Kern County retains that and puts it towards our contract costs. And then the difference between the total contract cost and that property tax revenue is what comes from our general fund. And so you can see in 21-22, the amount that came from our general fund was only $18,000. And then as you go into the yellow cells, you can see a huge increase, almost 1,000% to 196,000, and then each year going all the way up until we hit fiscal year 27-28, almost 1.3 million. And so that was one of the big expenditures that we saw coming. It necessitated us needing to Measure S revenue. Another factor is that there continue to be subsidies to some of our other funds that the general fund covers, starting with the airport operations. So airport's expenditures are, they exceed the airport's revenues. And so anywhere from about 160,000 all the way up to 274,000 is the amount that the general fund is having to cover for airport operations. And then we have a row here for airport projects. So there's been the taxiway relocation project, there's a fuel facility project, and then in the future, runway rehab projects. And so the FAA will reimburse us for 90% of those costs. The state will reimburse for 4.5% of the costs, and then the general fund kicks in for 5.5%. And so that's what those amounts are coming from the general fund. And then the landscape and lighting districts. So again, the cost to maintain these districts have far outweighed the revenues. The city's limited in how much we can levy those districts up to the max tax. We are levying at the max tax, however, we can only increase that up to CPI each year. And so you can see that ranges right around $500,000 per year is the amount that the general fund has to kick in to cover those expenditures. Another big factor is insurance. So the city carries a lot of insurance for our employees and to protect our assets. So we've got our workers' compensation insurance. In this, all other insurances, you've got property insurance, vehicles, cyber insurance, a variety of insurances. And one of the reasons that we're seeing this 23% increase in 24-25 is primarily from our property insurance. So our risk management authority conducted for all agencies, we did property appraisals this last year on all of our properties, and so we saw a lot of the values get brought up to where they really are, and so now we're seeing the associated insurance premiums also going up. And then we're going to look at some of the major kind of one-time capital projects, capital expenditures. We've got a lot of them as part of the nearly $40 million expenditure budget. So this first page kind of highlights some of the big capital projects. You've got the Denison bicycle and pedestrian improvements, $2.2 million, all funded through federal grant. The City Streets pavement rehab project, just over $2 million. Almost all of that is coming from Measure S general fund money. And then you've got, again, various infrastructure, street-related projects going all the way down. And again, so just to reiterate, most of these are being funded by grants, the federal or state level, some of them from Measure S funds. And again, just to show the great job that our Development Services Department and Public Works Department does in seeking out these grants so that we can get all of this work done and funded.
Other question? The roundabout Tucker and Highline, federal grant, are we paying anything on that?
Just some of our traffic mitigation fees.
Is that Park County as well, or no?
Yeah, so you remember, Mr. Smith, several years ago, the City of Tehachapi and the County of Kern, led by Jay Saucer, our Development Services Director, established a traffic mitigation fee. So there's a local fee that's collected in the city, and then there's a regional fee that the county collects. So we've approached the county, and they are ready, willing, and able to partner with us, and we'll be taking the lead on the project, but they will be contributing their portion of the funds. If I recall, are they a little, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, so, there it is, great. Good afternoon. Yeah, so that 673 is the estimate of the match requirement for that project. It's about a $3 million project. The 673 is the 11, it's CMAC, which you know well. That's our 11.47%. We're going to split that amount with the County of Kern because we share this fee program. So none of the funds are expected to come out of general fund. They will all come out of traffic fee funds. And we haven't figured out the breakdown. I think we roughly think it's 60-40 with the county bringing 60, right. But I still have to finish that negotiation with the county. But the maximum we would pay would be 673 if the county backed out and didn't pay anything, which is not a realistic possibility.
And this is the first roundabout in this area. And the concept is to keep traffic on Highline moving.
Commuter
right, whether
traffic.
going east or west, keep it moving.
That was the question I had.
That was.
Because Tucker does not go through.
Well, it
So
does
why
to the
would
south,
we
but
have?
barely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why would we have a roundabout if you only have, it's a T, Tucker comes into Highline, and then it doesn't, go, what is it,
Well,
south?
Well, it does go.
But
Goes
it's
down
just
to
in the
the
mountain
road.
meadows.
No, it's paved.
It is?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but,
We'll have to go on it.
so there was a larger conversation between us and the county leading to this moment about the future of Highline. And it's a commuter route. And so the engineers kind of got together and said, well, how do we deal with growing intersections of traffic and commuter routes that are traveling at high speed? So that's why you see this project is going to be the first kind of foray into how we do that.
And you remember several years ago, Mr. Smith was working on general plan and zoning and traffic flows at Highline, East and West, Kenyon. We're finishing that out, one little section at a time. We have Valley Boulevard, we have Tehachapi Boulevard, and we have Highway 58. So those are the east-west corridors. And the concept was, rather than one big 4-lane freeway, I mentioned 58 just a minute ago, but in the city, 2-lane roads are better than one big street. So that's the concept.
So the county has to pay mitigation for all those who use it, not, we are
They collect-
mitigating what the city contributes to that traffic count at the intersection.
They collect fees the same way we do. In fact, we have a joint fee program that we both adopted simultaneously. And so they've collected funds and so have we, and so that's where the 673 will come from.
Okay, that explains the county and city
Mhm.
mitigation fees. Okay, thank
Does
you.
anybody remember how much we have in our mitigation?
But I'll let them, I mean, they're
Sorry.
Not at the top of our
That's
head,
okay.
But we know exactly what it is.
Well, I've
on
got it to
paper.
the penny. No, I
Do you?
don't. It's.
Oh, I'm sure we have more than this, so,
Yes.
you know, that was my question. I really do not like roundabout, only
Mhm.
because sometimes I got into wrong way, and I've done that many times, and I drove in head-on in Bakersfield one time.
Sure. Yeah, they
And
need-
my daughter had somebody hit her car on the roundabout, and,
Yeah,
so.
that's a debate maybe for another day, but I'd be happy to sit with you and explain the engineering principles. I understand the feedback that people have regarding them. Greg and I frankly have debates about them on a regular basis, but.
But the fact of the matter is, you know, stop signs, traffic signals, intersections are where, if you're gonna get in an accident, that's probably where it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that, you know, now I understand why this roundabout will help, because the flow of traffic, then, you know,
Keeps
the
everyone
commuter
moving.
doesn't have to stop.
And it
And that's a
prevents
big plus.
the head-on intersections. We've had a number of very serious accidents at that intersection or in that area in the last 10 years, including a couple fatalities. And so this is what drives the engineering team to look for solutions that maybe are not as desired by the populace, but are safer. So,
Well, and I know we're not here to discuss this specifically, because we've got about 30 more pages to go through here, but the flea market that sets up, or whatever you want to call it, on the Kern County, is going to be really important that we don't allow that,
we
because
address
that's
that
going to
as
be
part of this.
tremendously
Yeah.
dangerous.
By design, we're going to work on that. for us.
Yeah, see the no parking sign.
You may have not seen it, but yeah, there's been,
People ignore them.
the county has installed, yeah, they do ignore them from time to time, but they have identified that area as a safety area and installed some parking
Yeah.
signs recently.
Thank you.
What does CPI mean? I meant to stop you back there.
It's the consumer price index.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Kind of like inflation in a way, like.
The rate at which things are inflating.
It's an annual
Bad.
rate that we're
Right.
adjusted to.
Okay, thank you.
So continuing on some of our major expenses, so we have the airport land use compatibility plan, $150,000, BK Theater expansion, the Ped Summit Interchange.
I'm sorry, what was the ALUCP, what did you say?
The airport land use.
Oh, that's what I thought.
compatibility plan.
I Googled it, but I wasn't sure if but that was the correct one. Okay, thank you.
So the FAA set standards, and they recently, or some time ago, changed their standards. And so we need to make certain that our documentation is up to theirs.
And then kind of starting in the summer bit, we kind of move into, away from the capital projects, but more now into like the capital expenditures, that are the one-time department type of expenditures. So you can see, police has a couple vehicles and other police equipment budgeted at $250,000. That's coming from Measure S General Fund. They also have a radio encryption upgrade for another $250,000 from Measure S. Into Public Works, they've got some large vehicles, a street sweeper, bucket truck, tractor, backhoe. They are going into a new asset management system, and they're going to split those costs three ways. So about 1/3 in the general fund, 1/3 to the water fund, and 1/3 to the sewer fund. And then you've got their normal repairs and maintenance to various facilities and vehicles budgeted. For the first year, we've got this banked water, 500 acre feet, 238,000. And then out of the sewer fund, a big project, a new reclamation area at 1.2 million, and then the sewer clarifier overhaul, 150,000.
Question on the asset management system. So you said that's a 1/3 share of 450,000?
No, the total, the budget is 150,000.
So it'll be 50,000 for each department sharing that?
Correct.
Okay. And where's the new reclamation area?
we talked about in closed session. We have it in
That's right,
escrow.
okay, that's what I thought. Oh,
Yeah, property purchase.
Okay, now we'll look at some of the numbers. So overall citywide revenue total is 38.2 million. You can see that the general fund revenue is just over 17 million and makes up about 45% of the total. And then capital projects, so all of the grant revenue comes in at just under 6.9 million, makes up 18% of the total budget. Then after that, you get into our enterprise funds and our special revenue funds that you can see that are their corresponding revenue. There's the same number, but just given to you in a pie chart. And so again, you can see that large blue section, that it is the general fund portion of revenues at 45%, and again, capital projects with grants at 18%.
I have a question pertaining to the grants. Who writes the grants, the majority on behalf of the city?
You're looking at them, all of us.
All of you?
Mhm.
Well done.
yes.
That's very, very difficult, and that makes a tremendous difference, so thank you.
Now moving on to the expenditures. So again, citywide, total expenditures just under 40 million. General fund, again, is the largest share, 18.5 million, makes up almost 47% of the total budget. And then again, the capital projects that are budgeted next year, 6.3 million, making up 16%. And then you go down to the various enterprise funds and special revenue funds.
And you'll see the expenditures under the airport, 1.636 million. That's a lot of money, and obviously that's the big FAA grant that we received. If you'd like to go out to the airport, if you haven't done it yourself, I'd be happy to take you with Ashley, and you can have a look at that project. It's gonna not only benefit the airport with the new taxiway and drainage, but the city obviously too, because the water is flowing onto the airport, through the airport, and onto other bases. But it's a beneficial project for the entire city.
Here's the expenditure budget given to you in a pie chart. Same thing, largest share is that large blue piece of the pie. General fund at 18.5 million, making up 46%. Capital projects, 6.3 million, making up 16%. Followed by sewer and then the other enterprise funds. And then one more pie chart of that same total number, but just broken down into expenditure categories. So personnel, so our total staffing citywide makes up about 1/3 of the entire budget at 13 million. Our operating expenses, so supplies, maintenance, everything for the city to run, makes up 44% at 17.3 million. And then those same capital projects, about 6.3 million, and then another few million for the equipment, the vehicles, and the other equipment that are one-time costs in this budget, make up about 9.3 million.
Is that about right compared to other cities our size, this relationship of this pie chart?
Typically, you see the larger personnel costs. It's about a 50-50 almost
Yeah.
always. But in this case, it's very balanced.
Now, these all incorporate the fire contract as well,
Correct.
which can skew things, in a big way, and it does. Okay, thank you.
And following on his fire contract, and I know I'm probably jumping, is this a projected cost for 2028 on the first page, I'm sorry, for fire, for the total contract, is that projected?
Oh, for the fiscal year 27-28?
Yeah.
No, that is the total.
That is the contract,
That's it.
thank you.
It's the contracted amount that we signed with the county of Kern 2.5 years ago.
I would say the part that varies in getting the amount that comes from the general fund, because it also depends on how much property tax revenue comes in and goes towards the contract, and then the remainder is what the general fund is. But the total cost is set.
The total, okay, thank you. Just want to confirm that.
Okay, and then looking at the personnel budget then citywide, so the budget includes a cost of living adjustment of 2.8%. The city uses the November CPI index factor, and so that was 2.8%, that's what's being applied. New positions in the budget, there are 2 maintenance workers to help with these special events. We have 3 senior maintenance workers, one of those for street maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, another one for facilities maintenance, and then another one to help with the new asset management software. We have an associate engineer to help with all these capital projects that $24 million over the next few years. And then a community engagement coordinator to help with the growth in that department and all the special events going on. And then starting next fiscal year, 25-26, we have a water systems operators body. And then here's a little snapshot of the employee counts. Just want to point out, you'll see under the actual 23-24 column 72, that is with, there's vacant positions right now. And so you can kind of see the jump from 72 as of right now up to 88. There are 7 new positions in there, meaning that if you think the difference, there's actually 9 unfilled vacant positions right now that have already been authorized and budgeted. And so a lot of that is in our police department, a few in our public works, and one in our development services department.
And you're projecting that to be fairly level for the next 5 years. That seems
Yeah, we don't
real
take.
conservative. Yeah.
Well, that's the point. We budget conservatively with our revenues and with our personnel also. So we've taken a hard look at all of our departments. We've had many discussions, projected out, not just our budget, but what do we see coming as far as projects, and how are we going to manage that and maintain those items, whether it's equipment or infrastructure. And not to say that we won't be asking for additional personnel in the future, but certainly this is a spike. But when you are managing and maintaining, again, I believe the cleanest, safest city in Kern, that takes people, good people, to manage those assets, and that's what we're talking about here.
So this, the new positions, these are just merely a headcounts, because according to the staff report, there is a community engagement directors and approved the job description, isn't it?
That's
Isn't
correct.
that new position, or that position is already included? Because it's not listed here.
We're adding that position to the salary schedule, and we're adding the job description to it.
Yeah, new position. I don't see community engagement director there.
Well, it's on the salary schedule. You're right, it is not here, but Mr. Budge would be that person. So it's not hiring a new person.
Yeah, that was my question.
Right,
So
it's not an additional person to the head count.
what is your title right now?
Manager.
Okay. But, so, in the agenda, there is a manager as well as director. So manager, we're not creating a manager's job description, are we?
So we
No.
had that job description, I believe it may have been added last year. So we've revised that job
Oh,
description.
so because of
so it's
the revision that you have.
Correct.
Okay, thank
So
you.
there were revisions to that as well as creating the new job description for the director.
So that clears it.
Yeah, and then also want to point out, we're not going to be jumping from 72 to 88 to 89 overnight, right? These things take time. You know, it's been 10+ years, and we're just getting to the point where our police department is going to be fully staffed. Of course, the intent is to staff appropriately. We need the ability to budget and the authorization to move forward, and we would start advertising and interviewing, going through those processes so that we can fill those positions over time. Not happening day after tomorrow or July 1st. We're not adding 8 people July 1st. It's going to be over the next year or more.
I've been following pretty well, but I'm stuck here. So
in 24-25 column, it says 88 full-time employees next year. So current year 72, the difference is 16. But there's 8 new positions, so
So,
what am I missing?
so if you're looking at just 24-25, there's actually 7, because that water systems operator is starting in 25-26. That's where you go
Oh,
from
I see.
88 to 89.
So that would be
But
7.
you're right. So then the difference is budgeted unfilled positions right now, so vacant positions. So there are, so if you take the 7 out of the 88, you'd be at 81, and then 81 minus the 72 means there's 9 positions right now, currently, that have already been budgeted, but they're vacant. So they're authorized in 24-25, and they're budgeted for that year, but just right now, in our actual column, we don't have those positions filled right now.
The 72 is actual head count right now.
Correct.
It's
So it would be less confusing if you were comparing budgeted positions to budgeted positions instead of filled positions to budgeted positions. But I get it, okay. So back to the staff report, you have 2 full-time people in community development now, and you're going to have 2 more or 1 more?
You mean community, non-development?
Community
Yeah.
engagement.
Mhm. And so, no, just 1 more.
1 more.
1 more. 3 total.
So-
He, Maya, and 1 additional.
Why does it say 2 new positions? The salary schedule presented includes 2 new positions.
Well, that's because we're changing the title of Mr. Bush.
And the coordinator's a new position.
Okay.
So on the salary schedule, there's several positions on there that are not actual positions now, but we leave the titles on there and salaries because, so we don't have to keep making changes because it's required for CalPERS. So we're just adding those positions to the salary schedule, and so you have those titles and the corresponding pay, but it doesn't mean that all of those positions on the salary schedule are actually in the budget.
So you have 2, and you will have 2, but they might have different titles?
We have 2, we're gonna have 3, 1 will have a different title.
You're going to have 3. Okay. So, one more question maybe. So, this is a little circular, and maybe you could expand on it, because it says that the positions being added to account for the growth of the department. But what's driving that growth? That isn't really stated. Why do you need more bodies to do the work?
Good question. So, transparency is 1. Mr. Budge and Maya currently, they are talking with you and many, many others. Every day, there is information that we are ready, willing, able, and quite frankly, very happy to provide to the public. And with all of the community events that are happening in and around our city. Also, community engagement now is very engaged with our police department. So public safety information is being pushed out. Construction data that Jay's group drives. So what we found is there is a big desire for the public to know what we're doing, and we're happy to be able to provide that. So that's the main driver, or drivers. And Key, did you have something else?
With the events, they're more centralized now, but they had been in multiple departments. And now they'll pull together through one department versus having some in economic development, some in admin, and some in my area. So they'll all get housed in a centralized location of efficiency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I have a suggestion to make for Ahmed. Just to clear, I mean, that was a very good question about the head counts. But we've been, I mean, because when I was a finance director, we did the same way. If you wanted to just have a line item vacant, it is budgeted, yet vacant, then we can truly compare what was budgeted this current year and versus the growth.
Yeah, that's a good
Then
suggestion.
people wouldn't say, wow, you're adding, 16 people.
You're right, and I'll blame a little of this on CalPERS. As you know, Ms. Chung, a couple years ago, they started driving so much bureaucracy in what local government does. And so we're trying to manage that on a level where we have, these positions, even though they don't want to fill, and we have no intent to fill them, at least short term. But it's managing them a bit on how we manage our own affairs. They have created a lot of this confusion. But your suggestion is a good one, thank you.
Just for the presentation, I'm not saying to change anything to salary schedule, but then we will be very clear.
Okay, now we'll focus on the general fund. So, starting with revenues, general fund revenue at $17.2 million. You can see the largest share is the blue piece of the pie, sales tax at 51%. That used to be much lower before we had Measure S. Measure S more than double the amount of sales tax that the city receives now, and so that is by far the largest contributor to general fund revenue.
So, question, for the sales tax, I believe Measure S may be a little bit more than actual sales tax due to like vehicle purchase and whatnot, right?
You're absolutely correct. So when we first did the ballot measure, we just estimated 4 million because that was roughly the amount of sales tax. Even our sales tax consultant, looked at the numbers, but without really having kind of a year of baseline to know what's going to come in, we thought it would be a little bit more than the Bradley Burns 1%. And so what we have been seeing, though, we did revise our Measure S revenue at mid-year up to about 4.5 million from the 4 million because of the online sales and the vehicle sales, where the city wasn't getting anything for vehicle sales, they're now getting 1%, no matter where it's being purchased. So it is more than just the 1%.
That's for the public to know. A lot of people do not know that though. That if you buy your vehicle in Arizona, you still pay the tax rate that Tehachapi tax rates.
So are dealers required to ask you where you live?
Yes.
Or it's an
Absolutely.
automatic?
When you
your
register
address
your vehicle with the
generates-
DMV.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It also saves you from paying their rate if you're a resident here with a lower rate in Kern County.
That's right.
To buy something in Lancaster, what are they, 10% or something?
More than 10 and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
10 and a quarter.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to pay their rate of sales tax, you pay where you live, that rate of sales tax.
Correct.
It's important, but they're usually pretty good about telling you that, so they probably have to. Okay.
So here's the top 10 revenue sources. Again, you see sales tax at 8.7 million, followed by the vehicle license fees, which are more of a property tax, in the form of property tax that you receive. And then followed by property taxes, our development services department, with building permits and plan check fees and project management, their revenue comes in about 1.4 million. And then our hotel tax, TOT tax of 8%, that is just under $1 million estimated. And then there's that fire protection property tax that we talked about earlier that supplements the fire contract. Our interest income is at $300,000. I'll explain a little bit more in a future slide why that's coming down. And then followed by our franchise tax, business license tax. And then the police grants, that is our COPS grant that we receive for police staff. And then kind of just breaking out the other revenues outside of the top 10. That miscellaneous revenue of $414,000, a big chunk of that, over $300,000, is actually a transfer coming back from our airport fund, and that is the FAA's reimbursement of the Mojave House acquisition that was purchased the year before. So we anticipate getting reimbursement, and then that will go back to the general fund general fund subsidized that in the first one. And then that service admin charge of $280,000, $250,000 of that is related to RBA, the successor agency admin fee. So each year we have to submit that for approval. We did get the $250,000, the full amount approved for next fiscal year, and we hope that we can continue to get that in the future.
You can only go first.
And then here's a comparison between 24-25 next year and our current year, 23-24. So again, sales tax is up a little bit on the Bradley Burns 1%. It's just up slightly, maybe flat, but the Measure S, we checked in a little bit of an increase there. All of the other taxes and fees are just slightly up. The development services revenue, we showed down mainly just because of conservative budgeting. There was a lot of development this last fiscal year, and so we revised our 23-24 mid-year estimates up to what we knew, and then going forward, we kind of dropped that down to a more conservative number. The interest income, you can see there a drop of $200,000, and that is because we anticipate the Feds to start cutting interest rates pretty soon. It was expected that they would have already started to cut, but they keep delaying because inflation has stayed higher than what we would like. But it is likely coming in the next quarter or two. And so we continue to try to invest at the highest rates possible, but we can only do so much based on what the Fed does. So we anticipate that income coming down next year and the following years. And then on the police grants, you see that minus $86,000, and that is the COPS grant. There's kind of two components of the COPS grant. There is a baseline of $100,000 that the city does receive every year, and then there's a growth component that the city would receive. The growth component is not kind of guaranteed, and so again, we conservatively budget. We've been receiving that growth component each year, but there's always a chance that it gets discontinued and we drop down to the $100,000. So we just budget at the $100,000, and then at mid-year, if we know we're getting more, we'll revise it upwards. It's just a line graph of kind of those same main revenue sources. You can see the property taxes, franchise taxes, business licenses. They've just been pretty stable, just kind of slow growth. But you can see the large jump in the blue sales tax, and that was from Measure S coming on.
Does Measure S remain safe from the state sticky hands or legislation that could be in the form of
I would say nothing remains safe from the state. They've proven that to us in my 20 years here. 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
They've taken revenue from the city taxpayers.
when they have a deficit, they go to the city to bail them out.
That's exactly right. And so that's why it's so important for us to budget conservatively, to keep our reserves at a nice level, and to seek out as many grants as we can. But we're always keeping a keen eye with our partners, other cities in Kern, League of California Cities, and others, making certain that we know what's going on, talking to our lawmakers, and being very engaged with that process. But it's a never-ending battle and something we do not take for granted.
I probably wanted to put 2 cents. I involved part of Measure S when I was working. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Measure S is one of the most secure, the tax first, the local.
The way that we word it, we're very careful in our wording. But we're not taking it for granted. We're absolutely not taking it for granted.
It's a secret.
And then we'll kind of give you some line graphs of each of those individual top revenue sources. So again, sales tax revenue projecting about 3% increase year over year. And then when you compare that to 22-23, 67% increase. And mainly just because in 22-23 we had 1 quarter of the tax come on that was effective April 1. We had about $1 million that year. And
And again, I'll remind the council that the beauty about Measure S is the citizens of the city of Tehachapi are contributing about a nickel towards every dollar. So 95 cents out of every dollar is coming from outside of the city. So we're benefiting greatly by the money that's spent in our city. When they shop at our downtown shops, when they eat our restaurants, when they, they shop at Albertsons or, Walmart, so on and so forth. So the benefit is great to the city. So the payoff is really, really good for us.
That's a huge number, 5%. That's a good return on your investment.
Absolutely.
But I
95%.
would add too, though, yeah, it is very beneficial, but, we provide very safe shopping environment.
We do.
We provide a very nice road for them to come in, pass by, drive in, do shopping, and so
It's not free
it's not free,
to
definitely not.
provide the services that we provide. The public safety, whether it's police or fire, whether it's supporting, the school district and the children that we're educating in our community, the hospitals, the recreation, all of those sorts of things. So the money's being put, as you can see, to good use.
Yeah. And it's shared with that other.
And it's shared.
With everyone.
That's
Okay.
it. Okay.
Next is property tax revenue, just under 2.5 million. So we're projecting a 3% increase year over year, and over 2 years, that's a 9% increase. And going forward, we're projecting about a 3.5% growth in our property tax revenue. Our TOT hotel tax, just under $1 million. We're being conservative, just going with a kind of 1% growth each year. Over 2 years, that is a 5% growth. We've kind of had a dip from 21-22 to 22-23, but we are now coming back up. And although we're being very conservative, it looks like we're going to see these numbers. So.
What's our rate at the moment?
8%.
That's pretty reasonable compared to any other place you stay. The transient occupancy tax is what, 12-14%? Yeah.
I think it's one of the lowest, honestly.
It is one of the lowest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Anaheim is 14, 15, 16%.
Yeah.
I
In
believe
addition
that-
to a lot of other.
Like
items.
airport fee or this
I was
fee or
in
that.
San Luis Obispo a couple weeks ago, and there were 3 or 4 line items.
Yeah, on top of the
Yeah.
TOTF, for sure.
And those communities put those dollars to work
Yeah.
for them, so kudos to them.
Okay.
The vehicle license fee, 1.9 million. As I said earlier, basically there was legislature back in 2004 where the state collects the license fees and then remits it in the form of property taxes now to the cities. So the good news about that is it is not tied to population anymore as it once was. So there was a baseline that was kind of established, and now this number goes up or down based on our growth in assessed valuation. So if our assessed property values are going up each year, then the amount we receive in this form will also go up by that percentage.
So as a reminder, the population at CCI now does not come into play. It used to, it does not now. It's based upon a property valuations, not population.
That's a more stable number to
Absolutely.
budget from.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the gas tax still per capita, right? So
Correct.
probably that's the only thing left for the population head count matters.
You haven't looked at that in a while.
So one thing I was researching quite a bit is, like you said, the SB1 and the gas tax
Right.
are based on population.
Population. So probably that's the only thing left.
No, those are the rules, but we found that Sacramento is diverting some of that money to other communities for special projects also.
Okay, moving on to general fund expenditures. So 18.5 million. You can see the blue pieces of the pie. We've split out our personnel, police personnel of just over 5 million, 27%, and then our non-police personnel at 3.7 million, another 20%. So together, out of general fund, our personnel costs are about 47%. And And then the operating expenditures, again, just to make things run, another 46% of expenditures.
We spend about $1 million a year on electricity. Wastewater treatment plants, the pumps for fresh water, almost $1 million a year on electricity.
And we don't get any benefit from having all these turbines and things in our backyard with a lower rate. Okay, let's not go there.
And then you see the same 18.5 million expenditures, but broken up by department in the general fund. So you see our police, that's 6.4 million, is 35% of the budget. The yellow piece, this general government, that is typically not that high, but what's included in that number that's bringing it up to 4.7 million is we have transfers out to our capital projects. So any of these capital projects that are being funded, for example, by Measure S, and in this number there's 2 million towards the street pavement rehab project that's coming from Measure S, that's part of that 4.7 million there that's coming from general fund. So it's brought that percentage a little bit higher than what we typically see.
But being paid for by Measure S.
Correct.
Whereas, okay, so the Measure S is used as whole graph.
Right, and
For
you'll
the
s-
street projects
Yeah.
that we have.
Yeah.
And you'll see over the next 2 years, a slight deficit spending, but that's in general fund. But that's because city council and the citizens want Measure S money to work for them, and we're putting it towards asphalt and those things. So you'll see a slight dip, but it's being put to good use.
And you'll notice on the police fund, we have run, the city's run up close to 50% or more of their general fund for the police departments we're fortunate at 35% now. It used to be much higher, correct?
And I would say it typically is a little bit higher than that. That percentage is lower, again, because that yellow box there is taken up more in this next year's budget. But on the next slide, you'll see it kind of revert. So
Okay.
this is kind of the same snapshot, but 4 years later in our 28-29 budget.
Yeah.
And you can see the general government piece has kind of come down because we currently don't have anything budgeted out in that fifth year as far as the street project that would be funded by Measure S. You can see the police now is back to about 40%. But the other thing I wanted to show was the fire contract. It was 7% in the previous slide, and it's nearly doubled now by the time we get to 28-29.
But that, as far as the police department, that's still a comfortable percentage of the general fund. Of public safety and, police and fire. When you are in need, you want someone to be there.
That's right.
And we're prepared, so. Okay.
Okay, this next slide is basically our overall kind of summary budget for the general fund. So we kind of give you the actuals from fiscal year 22-23 over to what our mid-year estimates were for the current 23-24 year. And then in yellow, that column 24-25, that's next year's budget, followed by the 4 preliminary budgets after. So kind of summarize our key revenues there, and then our key expenditure categories. And then if you kind of look at that row that says surplus deficit, that yellow row, you'll see in 24-25 and 25-26, we show $1.3 million in deficits there. But again, we have the $2 million road rehab project funded by general fund that is bringing that total number into a deficit, as well as in 25-26, almost a $2.6 million street project funded by Measure S. But if you look there at the surplus deficit in the mid-year 23-24, you have $2,166,000. That was the surplus we're estimating for the current year. As well as the previous year, we had almost $3.5 million surplus. Some of that was ARPA money that we received for COVID. That was about $1.5 million. And then we did receive about $1 million of the first quarter of the Measure S that fiscal year. So we're really taking some of that surplus over these last 2 years, and it's part of our fund balance. It's being used for some of these one-time projects for street rehab.
But the deficit is, what, 1.5% or something of the total budget? It's not as significant.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean?
And this money this is exactly what this money's being collected for. Right, it's not, deficit, you think of as, you know, a big word, really. If you get $1 and you spend $1.50, that's a problem, right? But we're receiving a certain amount of money. We have a significant amount of money in reserve. So we're taking some of that money and putting it towards exactly what we said we were gonna do, and that is maintaining our infrastructure over the next 24 months. And then we're back to banking our reserves. And you can see the cash on hand also.
Yes.
Sorry, I want to make sure I understand this. So those years, if that deficit actually happened, then you would cover that from reserves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's intentional. It's by design, it's the plan, and it has always been the plan. Mhm.
And if we did not have those 2 years with those over $4.5 million in the street projects, we would have surplus.
Yeah, it's exactly what the council and the citizens desire, and so do we. We want to improve our infrastructure, so that's the plan. And you can see the results from last summer. It's beautiful.
Some of those ones are really
amazing.
I
They were.
drove down one the other day, I'm like, wow.
Yes.
Good street.
As you said, finally.
So over
Yes.
the next 2 years, you know, Arabian Estates, Mr. Smith.
Yes.
We're gonna get brand new roads this summer.
Wow.
You would never thought.
Are they ready for this?
Well, drum roll please, but it's going out to bid.
Yeah.
Among many other streets. of
Yes,
course, but,
we've been, that's gonna be
And it-
something we've been needing to do.
Absolutely.
Never had the funds to do some of
Absolutely.
these.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
Mhm.
So some of those capital projects are included in operating transfer out, right?
That is correct. Yeah, you can see kind of the big increase in that operating transfer out. It went from 1.3 million to 3 million and 3.3, but then it drops back down. So yes, the amounts that are coming from the general fund, basically Measure S revenue, out to the capital projects are in the operating transfer out.
We're lucky we have a healthy reserve to do that on these kind of years.
Yes.
Okay.
That makes our city great.
Mhm.
As small as we are, we are very financially sound.
Very solid.
That's what makes the city great.
And then, so after seeing all that for general fund, just a reminder of some of these still same challenges that we continue to see. So again, we talked about the fire contract and the big increases over the next 6 years. We still have a huge priority for public safety. We need to, recruit and fill some of these vacant positions and then retain our other positions in our police department. We have the insurance premiums going up. We'll continue to monitor that into the future. And then we talked about this earlier too. We've had these unfunded mandates from the state in the past. We now know that the state has a fiscal budget crisis, and so we hope that nothing comes down to municipalities in the future, but that has happened in the past. So we continue to have the subsidies to our landscaping districts and airport, deferred maintenance for our facilities and infrastructure. And then there's still a continuing, a threat of recession in the future. Inflation still remains elevated. When people stop spending money, then these decreased revenues come into the city. So all things that we'll continue to monitor. Let me pause there. If there's any questions on general fund before we head into enterprise funds.
Unfunded liabilities and, not, what's the account for CalPERS? How are we doing on that? Because that's something that cities struggle with a lot.
A lot of cities struggle with it, and it's something that can change year to year. I think some cities will plan on just trying to pay off their entire unfunded liability. But then, if you have a bad investment year in the stock market and CalPERS performs badly, then your liability will just jump right back up. So, something that Ms. Chung started, I think, a couple years ago was with the city, had a 10-year plan where we would make additional discretionary payments to
Right.
our unfunded liability. So we are, I believe, in year 3 of doing that now, and that kind of helps stabilize the spikes.
Yeah.
Because when you have a bad investment year, like what happened when it was last year, you see your unfunded liability increase, and then the required payments that you have to make as a minimum will also spike and skyrocket.
Yeah.
So by doing these annual extra payments that are included in the budget,
It levels it out.
it levels it out.
Okay, all right. We haven't got to that part yet, maybe, or?
I don't have a slide in there.
That's okay, but I think we understand that element is always something that they focus on. Okay. thank
So
you.
just 2 cents for the person funded is it's like a moving target, you
Yeah.
know. We thought we were getting there, you know, because we hit it, but then it changed in a negative way. And that was my experience. You know, we thought, based on my spreadsheet, so we're gonna pay this, and then next year, whatever the amount and we paid, let's say we paid additional 300,000, and we think that we were supposed to reduce 300,000, then no, another, 150 was added to it, so, yeah.
There's so many moving parts. CalPERS is the
Moving target.
largest in the nation pension collection dollars, if you will, and people that are paying into it and pulling out of it. But the investments are one thing, and depends on, when you were hired at the different agency, whether you're classic, or there's all kinds of moving parts, and of course, the stock market, all those different things. We are along for the ride. We're trying to just smooth that roller coaster.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our enterprise funds and our capital projects, special revenue funds. So we'll start with water. So the water revenue, we're just seeing a slight increase of 64,000. That's primarily due to a CPI adjustment that's going to be done to our water rates of 2.5%. Our connection fees and our entitlement fee revenue, again, that's based on development. We're showing decreases, but again, that's conservative budgeting. We had increased our 23-24 based on what the actions that we knew, and then we kind of go back to a baseline of being a little bit more conservative going forward. There's a pie chart of the total water fund revenue of about 3.3 million. You can see the large blue section is our water rates at 85% of the revenue to the water fund. A little 10-year trend of those water rate revenues. You can see kind of the last few years it's been relatively flat, and that's even with CPI adjustments, and that's largely due to the last couple of winters. We've had extremely wet winters, usage has been down, and so revenue has been flat. But then going forward, we're just again projecting some CPI adjustments and return to normal usage. For our connection fees, again, this is based on development. So the previous few years, a little bit of development, had a little bit of a spike in our current year, and then next year we see some development, and then again going forward, just back to conservative budgeting. For the water fund's expenditures, we're just under 3.4 million. You see personnel makes up 51% of that, followed by the operating expenditures at 35%, and then capital purchases at 14%. A little line graph of kind of the different types of expenditures. So you can see personnel has been increasing. There was a position added, I believe, in the 23-24 budget, and then we have another position slated to begin in 25-26. On the capital project, you see in 25-26 kind of a big jump up there, and that is because in that year, we have slated a $750,000 project for a transmission line connection for the Snyder and Mojave wells. As far as next year's budget, just some of the notable expenses are here, highlighted by the banked water reserve purchase, so $238,000 there. And then, as we talked about earlier, that asset management system, their share of it at $50,000.
Question. So probably this is the question to Don. Do we have any manual read meters now?
Very few. We've
Great.
converted almost all of them over to
Very good.
radio read.
Thank you.
And here is our budget for the water operating fund. And so I'll point you to kind of the operating surplus and deficit row there. You can see we have deficits each year going into the future. A lot of that is because of the planned capital purchases. However, even if you took out the capital purchases, we'd still be looking at deficits in the operating fund. And so again, that kind of implies a structural deficit where our expenditures outweigh our revenues. And that necessitates us to do a water rate study and likely adjustments to the water rates.
So we've already initiated the study. We've seen this on the horizon for some time. The City of Tehachapi has the lowest, if not one of the lowest rates in the entire Tehachapi region. This company, the Water Enterprise Fund, the company is in the business of selling water. And as it becomes more expensive to pump, store, and manage that resource, we're seeing a deficit on the horizon. So we've already initiated, a study. Dawn's been working on this, sewer and freshwater, both. And so we'll be looking at some rate adjustments at some point in the future.
I hope that these capital projects, which created deficits in water funds, have some significant infrastructure improvement because, I'm sure everybody has seen the news for the Atlanta, what's happening, Atlanta, Georgia. Their main water broke. And the the citizens of the city did not have water like 3 days, and they only because their infrastructure is so old. And they said some of the pipeline is early 1900s, and so it finally took its toll, and something happened. They were not able to fix it because it was so bad. And I saw a water fund, and I said, oh my goodness, this is something that, you cannot just fix it when that happens. This is something that, good, well-managed plans have to put place in place, because the cost is tremendous.
You're absolutely right, Ms. Tom. And so, to recall, with Dawn's leadership, Jay and Tyler and others, we have been on a journey to replace water lines, whether it's main water lines,
Very important.
creating, the connections, what's that? Looping, thank you, where we can, so we can divert from certain areas, because you don't want to have let's say, a cul-de-sac of water lines. You want to be able to, if something happens here, you could move the water from there to there, right? And so we have a really good plan that we budgeted. We started this journey several years ago and have been replacing a lot of water lines within our city.
I'm just asking out of ignorance that there is a way you can identify the health of the water line underneath the ground, right? Like you do take a pictures and whatnot, right?
To a certain degree, yes, we can do inspections of the water main depth.
Yeah, that made me think. It's like I thought about our water fund and our water department.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that can't happen here, but we do have a lot of flexibility in where the water comes from, and like Greg said, how we can open and close valves to divert water from different areas of the city to different parts and on the supply side. So, and then these capital projects definitely do improve that and allow for more flexibility in that, adding additional capacity for well pumping and those kinds of things. That is probably one of the areas where we're most vulnerable is in our production. We have sufficient and we meet all the state requirements, but we've had a couple times when a well has gone down in the middle of summer, and it makes it much more difficult to operate in those situations, and so we want to try and mitigate that.
We do have, I'll remind the council, we have an interconnect with the City of Tehachapi and Golden Hills CSP. So should they need water, or the City of Tehachapi need water, we have a valve that we can turn, basically. And I think, Don, if we replaced all the redwood wire wrapped water lines, so we're pretty up to speed, you know, knock on wood, and all the new technologies with water systems, so.
None of that we know of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the Atlanta, that their incident, they were not able to shut the valve and stuff, you know, because it was just like nonstop. Like 2-3 days, the water was just pouring out to the streets.
Wow.
From there, it's Maine. Was most scary thing. Can you imagine the whole city?
Yeah.
People don't have water for so many days. Anyway, thank you.
Continuing to the development fee fund, so our water entitlement fee fund and our connection fee fund. So this fund has been running negative. We've purchased a lot of water rights over the last few years out of these funds. So in the future, we don't show any planned expenditures, so we just see a lot of the revenues coming in. And so you see that negative number, cash number at the bottom, getting healthier as we go forward. And then the next page is just kind of the combined summary of the water operating fund as well as the fee funds. And so again, you can see you have these deficits, largely because of the capital purchases. And again, the reason why we need to complete the rate study and look at possible rate adjustments. Moving on to the sewer enterprise fund. We're seeing projecting a 72% increase in our sewer fees. That 2.8% is a CPI adjustment. We use the same November index as the cost of living adjustment for city staffing. And then on the connection fees, basically flat, just a small increase from 23-24. Pie chart of the $3.2 million in sewer fund revenue. Again, the majority of the revenue comes from the monthly sewer service fees at 82% of the revenue. The 10-year trend of those sewer rates. And so again, these have just been updated by whatever the annual CPI has been for November each year. We did see the last couple of years were 6% increases. It's dropped down to 2.8 now, and going forward, we're projecting it being much lower.
What occurred during that time period to get a 6.5? It looks fairly consistent across the way.
The majority was the 6%. They had the 6% adjustments in back-to-back years. So when we had these high inflation the last couple of years, and we used that November index, it was 6%. So not only did the staffing here, the employees received 6% COLA for those years. So the good news about applying that COLA adjustment to the fees then is that it can help keep up the revenues with the expenditures going on.
But it was the total federal inflation number.
The cost of, okay.
Which is the total across the board. People, supplies, power, everything.
2.8 COLA actually seems low compared to everything going on. That's just.
It's coming down to something way more reasonable.
Yeah.
6% is back to back. It was tough.
Yeah.
We had some agencies seeing 8.5%, depending on which month they use.
I believe it.
And here's just a little trend on the development fees for sewer and connection fees. Again, so last few years have come up based on development, and then going forward in the future years, we've dropped it down to kind of more of a baseline to be conservative.
You say that 2019, 2020, that was Walmart, right? And so, you know, this chart does show you a trend, but it's something that is, it's not something to hang your hat on, you know, as far as we don't count on this money to operate our business.
I guess connection fees, only history is correct. After that is just.
That's right. You can
Wild
only look
guess.
back. I mean, Jay, we've said with Jay, and, you know, we debate what's coming in or not, and, you know, when they will pull a building permit, so on and so forth. It's tough to project, but we certainly do our best.
But looking back, it does show trends.
Yeah. Say again?
I said I'd be in Vegas if I could figure it out.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty tough to put your finger on.
Right.
And then a pie chart of the sewer fund's expenses, so total 4.2 million. You can see they do have some large capital purchases, so 40% of the budget there, personnel at 29%, and then operating at 31%. Some of those major expenses in the sewer fund, as we discussed earlier, 1.2 million for the new reclamation area, clarifier overhaul, and then various equipment purchases and asset management system and so on. Here's the snapshot budget of the sewer's operating fund. And similarly to the water fund, there are some large capital purchases budgeted, and that is primarily the reason why we do see deficits in those years. However, sewer is in a better starting position. They have a lot more beginning cash available. However, you can notice at the very bottom, as we get towards the end, that cash is going negative. So again, similar to water, does necessitate a sewer rate study and possible adjustments to the sewer rates. For the sewer development fee funds, you can see in 24-25 and 25-26 under the capital purchase, there's that 1.2 million for the sewer reclamation area. In 25-26, you have 1,250,000 more capital expenditures there. So that, again, primarily why you're going into a deficit for those 2 years. However, the development fee funds do have available cash balance to fund those purchases. And then the combined summary of the operating fund and the fee funds. And it's the same story again. Large, in total, the capital purchases budgeted are large. They do take the overall fund into deficits for each of those years to fund those capital expenditures. There is cash available to do these, but that cash does dwindle down by the end of 2029 to 242,000.
And again, it's investing in our future, right? It's investing in the infrastructure. And wastewater treatment plants are not a good business to be in because you get peaks and valleys with what it costs to build or invest and then how many people use it and so on and so forth. But it's something that must be done. We're proud of the fact that we're investing in the future of our operations.
Where are we in terms of capacity, when we're gonna take the next big, add the next big element to
I
our
think Jay could speak to that probably best, or Dawn. But, you know, we're using less water in our homes.
Mhm.
So less water is going to the plant. And so our plan is 1.25 million max capacity, and we're now treating about 700,000.
So we're in pretty good shape
Yeah,
for a while.
We're in really good shape
But
at this point.
we always have the fund building its capital or its balance so that when we need more than 1.2 or whatever it is, what's the total capacity now?
1.25 is what it's on.
1.25.
So a few years before we reach that, we'll have the money to go ahead and start building on the next one.
Yeah, there's a lot of money also available for grants and that kind of.
Yeah, we've done
for
that.
expansions and, but a lot of our expenses now are around reliability and keeping the plant operating, reliable. So replacing equipment, cutting redundant equipment, those
Right.
kinds of things.
All the things that Ms. Chung brought
I
up
was just
earlier,
about to say.
that's what we're doing. I mean, we're planning and managing our resources,
Yeah.
whether it's money or infrastructure.
It's one thing to have a pipe break with water, it's another thing to have a pipe break with something else.
It's very bad. We've had that.
But, improvements to sewer plants, probably one of the most expensive things we do as a city, quite frankly. You
And
know.
we've had to have bonds to do that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're 20, 30, 40, 50 million plus if we're going to improve this facility. So we need some cash on hand, we need general fund to be healthy, we need assistance from the state in form of grants, whether it's USDA or others. And so we're always keeping our finger on that pulse.
Okay, as long as we're healthy, good.
Yep.
Okay, moving to our airport enterprise fund. So, again, total revenues and expenditures both match at 1.6 million. On the revenue side, we're getting some grant reimbursements for the projects. Some of that 457,000 includes the reimbursement for the Mojave House property acquisition. But if you take out those, certain revenues, there is still the general fund subsidy for the operations of the airport at 221,000. And then on the expenditure side, for 24-25 fiscal year, the capital project plan for the airport is the fuel facility at 178,000. Next is a pie chart that kind of shows you the different types of revenues in the airport operating fund. See the FAA grant reimbursement for that obviously makes up 20% of that revenue, but fuel sales are the largest contributor to airport revenues. On the expenditure side, you also have the fuel purchases in order to sell the fuel at 28%. Personnel makes up 28% of the budget, operating 43%, and then there's some small capital expenditures at 1%.
What are operating expenses at the airport? Some of the examples.
Electricity, maintenance, weed control. We talked about the gorilla snot, I guess is the acronym, the slang term for that, the dust control.
Yeah, okay.
What is it?
Gates.
Gates.
Really?
AWAS, our automated weather, the rotating beacon, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
Do you guys-
Owning an airport is very expensive.
Yeah.
Do you guys do FOD sweeps, foreign
Oh,
objects
yeah.
of debris?
Every
How
day.
often?
Every day.
Every day?
Don's crew, Public Works, they're there every day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Down the runway, taxiway, whatever.
Mhm.
Well, one piece of FOD just do everything else.
Managing the fuel deliveries.
Okay.
So, for the airport, the operating expenditure, 2023, 24, 24, 25 has like a significant jump. Is that kind of capital project involved in there?
That's the taxiway and the drainage. That's the
capital
big
project.
$6.5, pushing $7 million project.
Oh,
That's what we're working on right
okay.
now.
That probably involves some fund transfer to project funds.
Mhm.
Correct, from the operating fund to the capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now, the taxiway has been eliminated, it's gone. There's just the runway. Because it's being relocated.
So on that next slide, on the operating fund, again, like I mentioned before, if you look in the yellow column under FAA grant and state grant, there's 297,000 there, another 14,850. that combined $311,000 is the reimbursement for the Mojave House acquisition. And then you'll notice if you go to the surplus deficit row, highlighted in yellow, we show all zeros there going forward because it is an enterprise fund, and the reason it is zero is because there is a general fund subsidy revenue line item. So the deficit is basically cured by a transfer in from the general fund.
Ms. Jones is aware of this. The auditors years ago made us start recording this. So at the end of every year, we have this zeroing out.
Yes,
Yeah.
we carried it, and
Yeah, we carry into the minutes.
And then,
We don't do that anymore because we're not allowed to.
Because it's not collectible. I mean, we don't foresee any possibility of collection. So by the accounting rule, you cannot keep it at the moment.
That's right.
And then next is the airport project funds. These are the capital projects. You can see in the mid-year 23-24 column, there's $6.8 million expenditures. That was the taxiway relocation. A lot of that funded by the FAA grant and state grant, and then some matching funds from the general fund. The capital projects in 24-25, $178,000, that's the fuel facility project. The $1.5 million in 26-27, also a fuel facility upgrade project. And then the 27-28, 28-29 numbers, the $2.8 million and the 1.9, that is the runway rehab project in the future. And so, again, those are funded 90% from FAA, 4.5% from the state, and then 5.5% from the general fund. And then there's the combined summary of the operating and the project funds. So all those expenditures are totaled for both revenues and expenditures, and again, we don't show a surplus or deficit because the general fund transferring eliminates that.
I just want to make a comment that our airport users, I hope they understand. I mean, they know how lucky they are that we're not abandoning the runway because airport fund is not capable of, fixing that runway, or many other things. So we're very fortunate to be able to subsidize the airport fund with the general fund. And the airport does a lot of good things, but if general fund does not have money, there's no way that, that we can put any money, prioritize the airport fund, so it's a good thing.
so we do get a value from it that's not hard dollars that can go down onto a spreadsheet, correct?
That's exactly right. We do have an indirect benefit. It's like events downtown, right? There's a cost to supporting the events with public safety or communications or public works or otherwise, but there is an indirect that you can't necessarily measure.
And you can't put it as a line item.
Right. But it does cost, like wastewater treatment plant, airports are very expensive to own and operate.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
Okay, our next enterprise fund is the refuse fund. So this is our trash. And last year, this was looking pretty bleak. We were showing deficits in all the future years and running out of cash. And we knew that rates were going to have to be adjusted for the new legislation. So these numbers do incorporate the new rates that are going into effect starting in July. And so we now see that we do have surpluses in the future years, and we do have cash available in each year as a slight reserve. This next fund, we call it our litter mitigation fund. So the city receives about $66,000 a year from Kern County land use fees, and it is to help the city combat illegal dumping and litter. So what we've done is we've created its own fund to track this, and we allocate some of our public works staff for their efforts in litter mitigation. So So this does show deficits in the future years. However, we have some fund balance on hand. When we received it the first year, we had not begun spending the money. So we're kind of catching up over the next few years and spending down that money. And then in the future, we can change the allocations and some of our operating expenses to make sure we stay within our available fund balance.
Because you don't want that kind of account to be growing in a fund balance. It's for litter mitigation, it should kind of be leveled out. You've got to
It should
have
be done
personnel
now.
and whatever to clean up.
Yeah.
And then,
The goal is net net, and not only does it help pay for some of the public works personnel, but also any of the supplies that we purchase where volunteers go out and post cleanup days, right? So bags, gloves, the picker uppers, those sorts of things. That comes under this account.
So where is this 67,000, what funds do we get this from the county?
My understanding is a couple years ago, they increased certain fees, like a land use fee. And so when they collect it, then they allocate it to the different cities in the county for this purpose.
It went to the Board of Supervisors, and it's an allocation based upon road miles within your jurisdiction. So a certain amount of money per road mile that you own and maintain in your city, it is to be used for litter mitigation. And it's something the county spearheaded. We're just benefiting from it.
Next is our transit fund. So this is for our dial-a-ride operations. You can see over the last couple of years, there were some available COVID funds that the city utilized. Next year will be the remainder of that, of 17,000 that we'll utilize. Our fares have not been very good. We dropped that down to 2,500 because the county is kind of starting well, they've been starting in the current year, but next year they are offering some free fares in the summer. And so we don't know if they're going to continue to do that in future years, but we're being conservative and dropping our revenue from the fares. And then we basically try to balance out this account, so you can see in future years. The only reason you see that negative $1 or the deficit of $1 is because of a rounding. We have $1 cash on hand. So, but we basically request funding, the FDA funds, so that we can zero out and fully fund our transit operations.
And is this a state mandate or to have this transit?
Yeah.
It's a state mandate, correct?
In order to get kind of our streets and roads funding, then we have to satisfy certain requirements, and this is on transit.
So remember, memory serves me right, it's about $72 per rider, and we charge $1. And, now the county is providing free rides, and so now our $72 is gonna go up. So it's a state mandated program that we must adhere to.
and if you don't provide the dial-a-ride, you don't get your streets and roads money. So.
We're being held
those
hostage.
studies.
Yeah.
Mass transit works in big cities, bigger cities. In a rural area like this, it's very costly. You might drive 6 miles, 8 miles to pick somebody up. So it's challenging.
Yeah, and in that other revenues line, I see about 23,000 to 30,000. That's coming from the general fund essentially. That's to satisfy the fare box ratio requirement, the other requirement in order to then secure your streets and roads funding. So yes, the general fund does end up kicking in about 30,000 potentially, but we do get a lot in streets and roads funding. And then the city does have a lot more funds. We've got some special revenue funds, so we kind of just give you a snapshot here, kind of 5-year expenditure costs, and then also what the revenues are in those funds over the 5 years. So we have our kind of some street-related funds, SB1, gas tax, streets and roads, and then followed by a variety of other special revenue funds. And then continue on. These are our capital projects that we have budgeted in over the next 5 years. Actually, most of them we show over the next 3 years. Some of those we highlighted in the beginning as being our major factors. But as Greg said earlier, 23.7 million primarily over the next 3 years in capital level. And then to our landscape and lighting district funds, so we track each of these districts with their own funds. So you can see the various revenues, property tax based on the levies that go to those district properties, and the expenditures. And so although at the bottom you see that for the most part some of them show surpluses or they are zero, that is because a few of them have the general fund subsidy line item up above in the revenues because their expenditures are more than their revenues, and so the general fund has to kick in money to sustain these districts.
So what is the subsidy? Is it about half or more of the total? It's over half of what's
So
needed.
500,000 is the expected subsidy next year, and the total expenditures are at 947,000.
But our streets, but our city looks good.
Our neighborhoods shine.
Yeah. Like, for example, when you go up Curry, we now have a median with trees in it instead of just asphalt. I mean, you pay for those amenities.
Well, and the new contractor in the Alta Homes, Brightview, I think? Or is that correct? Bright? Is it Brightview? It's the new, it's new within the last
Oh,
year.
you're talking about the new landscape contract?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, anyway, it's done a great job.
They do an amazing job.
Yes.
You cannot say enough about Brightview.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Don found them, and we're lucky to be able to partner with them. They work for us, obviously, but they do a stellar job.
Yeah, I agree.
For this LLD, just, special district, we are not the only city that subsidize. There are many cities out there that subsidize, so.
It's really hard
I
to
just wanna
project
finish.
what it's going to cost.
And they didn't
To be-
anticipate probably every year 6%.
You're paying for
Yeah,
electricity for street lights, you're paying for the water to irrigate, you're paying for the maintenance of the systems. If something dies, you want to replace it, you don't want it to deteriorate. Right? It can be the broken window syndrome. Right? You want to keep it as nice as you can. And again, our general fund is healthy, and so we can do these sorts of things, whether it's subsidizing the LLD or the airport or different funds, we can carry that and bridge it to the point where we need to be so that now that fund is healthy again.
Don't forget also that in some of those LMDs, there are facilities that are benefiting the entire community. For example, Warrior Park is a benefit to the entire community, so it's not, we shouldn't expect the LLD to fully fund that entire, the cost of all those facilities. There's bike paths and walking paths and parks and those kinds of things that benefit the entire city, but even people outside the city. And so it's not reasonable to expect
One
the
neighborhood.
LLD
Yeah.
to fund that cost 100%.
That makes a lot of
I think
sense. Yeah.
up to a certain point, I believe general fund just do pay for Warrior Park. And I'm sure that he does annual allocation, but, you're right, because the park is expensive. The park is not limited to that particular track.
Yeah, parks don't make money.
It is, yeah, it is for a whole community, and, the thing is, because these are the new tracks, and that's why we are able to even assess whatever that we're assessing as of now, because the old tracks, we don't have such thing.
That's right.
And city 100% pays for it, so if you think about it,
That's
think it that way,
Right.
then it is, you can say it's,
We
you know,
all pay, yeah.
at least we're collecting
That's
half.
right. Yeah, Railroad Park, Pioneer Park, there are others that, there is no LLD.
I
General
can-
fund
yeah.
maintains those.
I can also mention, because of the city's standard is high,
Mhm.
we are subsidizing this, otherwise, the city may neglect it, but we are not. So this is what makes every street is clean and, you know, well maintained, and the street lights all work. So
Mhm.
not all the negative, although I do know that it's a very painful to see all that transfer out, so.
And then lastly, we have our drainage basin assessment district. So I'll point out that you do see that there is a deficit of nearly 72,000 for that. That is largely because of some one-time pump inspection and some maintenance in that $82,000 figure. So the way this levy has been done, this particular district has been collecting each year and kind of building up, and then they look to check on the pumps and see about possible repairs every 5, 10, 20 years. So there is fund balance available in this from prior levy collections, and that's what's covering that deficit.
That's for the Bailey Court, correct?
Yeah.
The Bailey Court Industrial Park.
Okay.
And the other one, the industrial parkway, that district actually has been handed over to Caltrans for their new maintenance yard. So there was no levy this year. We do have some fund balance in there, and that's why there's a little bit of interest income that may get earned and allocated on that until we look to either dissolve or figure out what we're going to do with that fund balance. And with that, that is the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Good
I don't
job
have
to
any
Mr. Jones.
questions.
Absolutely.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to give a applause to finance department, you know, Hamid and his staff. And I've been through this, so I know what it takes. And for each department has also, it is not a once a breeze job. They have to do a lot of historical trend study, and also, you know, the lot of projections that each department has to do. So it's a tremendous work involved in here, and I would like to give a big applause to everyone. Thank you.
I'll ditto that, absolutely. To everyone here, you got a question on here?
I just have one question. What is a sewer reclamation area?
So right now, the sewer reclamation area, two-part. Don, maybe you could answer this better, but we've got the sewer ponds down by the plant, but we also have the north side of the airport where we flood, irrigate, and grow alfalfa. So that's part of the reclamation process under the state permit.
Okay.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, we're looking to improve that by possibly moving that reclamation process to somewhere else besides the airport.
Okay.
And
It's
then-
more efficient and better utilized.
Right, and then we can open up the north side of the airport for potential aviation development as we move forward. So it's an economic benefit also.
It's in alfalfa.
Long
It's
term.
very
also,
expensive land to be growing alfalfa on.
Long term, there's a capacity issue long term.
A lot of moving parts, but we're a group of planners, and we're planning the future, whether it's finance or wastewater, freshwater, those sorts of things.
Where's the airport event center in all of this?
So the event center is out of the aviation component of the airport, but they're both very valuable, so they can be utilized more efficiently if and when we are able to move the reclamation area out.
Gotcha, okay. So what is our total budget now? It's close to 40?
39.
I was trying to think, when I started,
Mhm.
our total budget was around 4.
Mhm.
And maybe
When I started, we had, the reserves were minimal. And so very proud of what the team has been able to achieve over the last several years.
What's our reserves and what's the percent of the budget that's our reserves? that we use?
Well, I think you'd have to pull out the capital improvement
Yeah, the
numbers.
What's our general reserve that we have that,
So at the end of fiscal year 24-25, our ending fund balance, which we reserves, is a little over 19 million. Now, in that though, as far as available cash, there's loans that are a part of that. We also have our GASB 54 committed fund balance that's $1.5 million out of that. So we say our available cash reserves is at 14.3 million.
healthy?
Very
So
healthy.
That's good, that's where you wanna be. You don't wanna be staring down the rifle barrel of the state saying, we're gonna need your help and we're gonna have to tighten our belts to help them out, so.
And again, we're budgeting our revenues very conservatively. And so I don't want to go on record as to say we expect more revenues, but historically, that's what we plan. That's how we plan. So we budget very conservatively, money coming in. And so if there are no further questions, then we would ask for a motion. I can read it, or if somebody sees it.
I make
or-
the motion to adopt the budget as present.
I will second.
Just to verify,
Do
are
we
we
need-
taking both of these
Yeah,
together? or are we
together,
doing them
and
separately?
should we, why don't we have the city clerk just read the entire
You have to
motion?
do
Thank you.
No problem. So as long, yeah, as long as Mayor Pro Tem's okay with that, we'll take them together. So we, to adopt a resolution approving the City of Tehachapi budget for the fiscal year 24-25, the preliminary budget for fiscal years 2024 through 2026, 26 through 27, 27 through 28, 28 through 29, and adopt a resolution establishing a salary plan for each position classification in city service and repealing resolution number 35-23 and approving job descriptions for community engagement coordinator, community engagement specialist, community engagement manager, community engagement director, code enforcement officer 1, and code enforcement officer 2. So if we can get a motion again in a second.
So I
Yeah,
make the
the
motion
motion is-
directed
I'll
to the
second.
again?
You don't have to read it again.
Okay, so I make the motion as you read.
And I second.
Okay. Councilmember Chung?
Yes.
Councilmember Power?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cook.
Yes.
4-0 vote, motion carried.
Thank you. I think we can now.
Excellent.
Great job.
All right.
Go over on
I know.
I think we can adjourn.